The Berchtesgadener land region of Bavaria is justly famed for its 2,714-metre-high Watzmann Massif, but its many other sites are so unique that they are well known far beyond the region's borders. Hardly any other region has so many landscape highlights packed into such a small area. The Königssee is picturesquely framed by the Watzmann and the Hagen Mountains. The electric boats glide silently across it, taking visitors to the pilgrimage church of St. Bartholomew. Monks founded today's double-domed structure in 1134. The notorious eastern face of the Watzmann rises vertically just beyond it. The beauty of this region must certainly have influenced the Bavarian kings in their decision to shift their summer residence here. But even in the years since then, the region has retained its attractions, which is why leading figures in the Nazi Party moved here during the Third Reich. The arrival of Adolf Hitler marked a turning point in the history of Berchtesgaden and the Obersalzberg. On seizing power in 1933, Hitler began converting the Obersalzberg, firstly into a private residence and later into a second seat of government. Hitler purchased his original house, Wachenfeld, from a financier named Winter from Buxtehude. It was only after several conversions that the Berghof fulfilled his requirements as a second seat of government. The unusually large panoramic window could be lowered beneath the floor, and the Great Hall, located just beyond it, was the central room in the building. Numerous state visits from abroad soon made the broad flight of steps outside internationally famous. But even during the 1920s, Hitler was a visitor on the Obersalzberg in the Platterhof boarding house, named after its founder Judith Platter. Later, the Nazi Party acquired the building, and in 1938, under Reichsleiter Martin Bormann, it was converted into a luxury hotel. Gradually, the other members of Hitler's innermost circle moved to the Obersalzberg as well. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring had a country house built for himself on the Obersalzberg in Bavarian style. It occupied the finest site on the mountain, up on the Ecke Bichel. A great deal of conversion work took place up on the Obersalzberg, and one man was largely responsible for it: Martin Bormann. His house lay directly opposite the Berghof. Constructed mainly of wood, it was also home to Bormann's wife and numerous children. A one-time farmer, Bormann placed great importance on the construction of his own farm on the Obersalzberg, planning it as a model to be imitated by other German farmhouses. After the extensive construction work was completed, the farm, with its 200 acres of meadows and pastures, was indeed the most modern in Germany. In 1911, the house Zum Türken was built as an inn. In 1933, its former owner Karl Schuster was forced by the SA to accept a low purchase price. During the Nazi era, the inn served as a telephone exchange, and also accommodated the Reich Security Service and the Company of Guards. Beneath the Platterhof was the official guest house Hohe Göll. Formerly an annex of the Moritz boarding house, It was converted in 1935 into a guest house for top political functionaries. A frequent host here was Reich Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop. Until 1937, Martin Bormann also kept 2 rooms in this building as offices of the Obersalzberg administration. The steady expansion of the so-called Führer zone meant that an increasing number of SS men were required to guard it all. In April 1937, construction work began on a barracks, located between the Platterhof and Göring's residence. The barracks, staff car hall and non-residential outbuildings were arranged in a square, with the parade ground at their centre. Guarding the Führer zone on the Obersalzberg, complete with permanent sentry duty, required up to 350 men. The smoke-creating unit and also a huge anti-aircraft unit were stationed in barracks on the Antenberg. Towards the end of the war, the destruction of the Obersalzberg by the Allies followed attack plans that had already been completely elaborated in 1944. On April 25, 1945, the Obersalzberg was subjected to a 3-hour-long bombing raid by 318 RAF Lancasters. The square of buildings at the centre of the picture shows the SS barracks, with the Platterhof below. During the raid, all the leading Nazis, apart from Hermann Göring, had already left the Obersalzberg. Hitler and his Supreme Command were in the Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin at the time. The hilltop was devastated by the raid. The Platterhof, here in the foreground, was very badly damaged, and the SS barracks were totally destroyed. Göring's country retreat received a direct hit on its gabled facade. Bormann's house, seen here on the left, was also badly damaged. Hitler's Berghof was only partially destroyed. On May 4, 1945, the building was burnt to the ground by the remaining SS units on Hitler's orders. Nothing was to fall into enemy hands. Until 1948, the Obersalzberg remained the property of the occupying forces. When the Americans gave the Obersalzberg back to the Bavarian state, they insisted on the ruins being dynamited first. On April 13, 1952, by order of the Bavarian state government, the ruins of the Berghof and of Göring's and Bormann's houses were dynamited. The Platterhof was renovated during the post-war years. Until 1996, under the name General Walker, it served as a recreation centre for members of the US Army. The building fell into disrepair and was handed back to the Bavarian state. On May 1, 1999, the Gewerbegrund GmbH from Munich leased an area of land around 50 hectares in size, extending from the former Göring house to the Platterhof and down to the Gutshof. Despite fierce local protests, the Platterhof was demolished 6 months later. A large car park is due to be built on the site. All the walls and also the valuable marble of the Platterhof were smashed and pulverized. the debris was used to fill in the cellars and bunkers below the former building. The ruins of the former SS barracks were also completely levelled, and the SS shooting range below them was filled in. The former site of the garage hall at the Platterhof is now occupied by the new bus stop for buses to the Kehlstein. In 1999, construction work begins on a new luxury hotel above the ruins of Hermann Göring's country house. In early 2005, the five-star Intercontinental Resort Berchtesgaden Hotel, Germany's first mountain resort, is officially opened. The former Hoher Girl Inn is renovated and given a new use. From 1999 onwards, this building has served as a documentation centre. Beside the Hotel Zum Türken, there is another access tunnel to a small section of the bunker complex. The Hotel Zum Türken was successfully repurchased by its former owners after the end of the war. Renovation work began in 1949, and since then the place has been run as an alpine hotel. There is a further access tunnel to the bunker complex here. From 1943 until the end of the war, the tunnel detachments on the Obersalzberg built 5,700 meters of tunnel and around 100 underground caverns. Only a small section of the massive labyrinth is open to the public today. Doubtless the most impressive building that Bormann built on the Obersalzberg, and the only structure that survived the bombing raid completely unscathed, is Adolf Hitler's former tea house, up on the 1,834 meter high ridge of the Kehlstein. The bus stop on the Obersalzberg for departures to the Kehlstein at 9:30 in the morning. The first queues of the day have already formed, because the visitors can only reach the Kehlstein with specially equipped buses that are the only vehicles authorized to travel along this high mountain route. After buying tickets, there's enough time to pay a quick visit to the nearby souvenir shop and to pore through informative brochures in preparation for the unique experience to come. Then the 20-minute trip to the Kehlstein begins, during which the buses have to climb around 800 meters. The journey up takes visitors along one of the most daringly constructed mountain roads in Germany, and is a very special alpine experience for everyone on board. The entire route, 6.3 kilometers long, only has 2 bends. The steep rock faces and often sheer drops make it clear how enormously difficult it must have been to build this road in the first place. There are numerous, breathtaking views down into the valley below. At an altitude of roughly 1,700 meters, the bus trip ends at a turning area. From here, it's another 124 meters higher to the house, by elevator. Before we continue the journey by elevator, however, let's take a brief look at the underground rooms of the house, which are closed to public access. The heart of the plant here is a massive U-boat diesel engine with a generator, which not only operates the elevator, but also supplies the so-called Eagle's Nest with emergency power in case of outages. The engine, delivered by a U-boat shipyard in Bremerhaven in 1941, is still in its original condition today, thanks to regular servicing. Parallel to the entrance tunnel is the supply shaft, containing ventilation pipes and power cables. A 124-meter-long tunnel, faced with hand-broken natural stone, now leads us to a round hall, served by the elevator. The elevator cabin has room for 48 people, and is still in its original condition today. After rising for roughly 55 seconds, the elevator stops directly inside the Eagle's Nest. All the rooms in the building are now part of the restaurant. Even during the Nazi era, this room was used as a dining hall. A few of the furnishings, and also the oak panelling, are still original. From here you can reach the largest room of the building, the Große Rundhalle. It contains Mussolini's valuable fireplace, a present to Hitler on his 50th birthday, and the final remnant from that time. Five windows, all of which can be lowered, provide a fantastic view of the surrounding mountains. A few steps lead down to the Scharitzkehl room, often referred to as the Eva Braun room. Here too, the valuable stone pine panelling is still in perfect condition, even today. The Kehlstein offers visitors magnificent panoramic views of the surrounding mountains. And in contrast to an arduous mountain tour lasting several hours, visitors can get up here far more quickly and enjoy a fascinating bus ride in the process. The Kehlstein is also the starting point for numerous hikes and mountain tours in the High Alps. Directly in front of the house is an observation platform. From here, visitors can enjoy unique panoramic views that are among the best in the Alps. Perhaps the most impressive of all the views is the one southwards, across to the Steinerne Meer and the Königssee, to the Watzmann, the Hochkalter, and the Reiter Alpe. A short walk takes us down to the turning area, where the buses are waiting to drive us back down.
In 1936, Reichsleiter Martin Bormann met with two of his most talented engineers to discuss a secret project. Under orders from Bormann, Professor R. Fick, an architect, had previously made alterations to some of the buildings on the Obersalzberg mountain. He, together with Fritz Todt, the engineer, were to make this project a reality. A house on top of the 1,834-meter-high Kehlstein, to be a symbol of the regime. Fritz Todt was one of the most highly respected construction engineers of his time, and was the main figure of the Kehlstein project, which Bormann wished to present to Hitler from the Nazi Party on the 20th of April 1939 for his 50th birthday. From the very start of this operation, Todt had to deal with many obstacles. While surveying the location, they had to pay special attention to the cut of the rock surface, which proved to be an enormous hindrance on the steep and rigid area of the Kehlstein. Todt was also fascinated with this project, being himself an enthusiastic mountain climber. He, together with his colleagues, explored the whole Kehlstein area to locate a good route for the road. He was clearly aware that he was being assigned to one of the most challenging projects of his time for someone of his profession. After months of surveying the area, plans were drawn of where the road would be and also the position of the house. Then the activity began, by transporting ready-made huts along the dirt track up to the Obersalzberg. The local people knew nothing of the project and watched on with great interest. During this time, a cable lift was built so it was possible to transport the materials at least part of the way up the mountain. The carriers had one of the most important tasks at the beginning of the Kehlstein project. About 30 men would have to carry the materials along unfinished footpaths. The workers were mainly young men whose firms gave them the chance to volunteer for this project. They erected simple bases at different key points. Huge work camps were erected by different construction companies. Here is one of the best known, a base camp built by Polinsky and Zollner. The Camp Kehlstein, at 1,640 meters, was one of the highest. At some times, as many as 1,100 workers lived here. During the winter months, the work was made even more difficult. On some days, whole work teams would just be clearing the snow away. Also, permanent threats of avalanches from the Göll and Kehlstein hindered the work. After cutting down the trees and removing the undergrowth, they were then able to make a track to reach the next construction site. They had to demolish the large rocks by hand to a size that a compressor could crush. Uneven and treacherous pathways made the work very dangerous. After the conditions underfoot were improved, transportation of the materials was made a lot easier. When the lorries could not travel any further, extensive railroad tracks were laid to remove all the loose rocks. Down in the valley below, they often could hear the thunder of the explosive used in the detonations. The tunnels were especially difficult. Knowing the explosion could cause an avalanche and make the work even harder, extreme care was used to blow out parts of the rock face. Meanwhile, at another location, they had already blasted the mouth to one of the tunnels. On the peak of the Kehlstein, at 1,834 meters high, they leveled the first area of where the house would later stand. Not long thereafter, everyone got underway and construction was again in full force. Due to the severe time constraints, many people were assigned to this site. They made barracks, laid railroad tracks, built pulley systems, and even brought up cement mixers. One false move could have severe consequences or end in a fatal accident. Working day and night, the building of the house and road were accomplished in an unbelievably short time. If you compare today's construction technologies to the lack of them then, you will realize the achievement of each and every one of the engineers that helped the Kehlstein project. They were all pioneers. During the construction of the house, and 124 meters below it, the tunnel which leads to the lift was also being finished. Extending 130 meters deep into the mountain, the tunnel was decorated on the outside with marble taken from the Untersberg. White marble was used with a large stone plaque stating the year of completion, 1938. After 10 months of building, the thoroughfare was completed. The paving of the road was an adventure in itself. Again, caution and concentration were greatly needed for the maneuvering of the huge roller. Another problem was the cooling of the tar during the journey up the mountain. An alternate method of heating was needed upon arrival. They then laid the tar over the concrete road, which was then covered with gravel. After 12 months of hard work, interrupted by winter, it was now August 1938, and the road was completed. An amazing feat of engineering was accomplished, which must also pay tribute to the 6 men who lost their lives during construction. The whole project cost around 30 million Reichsmark. That's over 70 million of today's US dollars. On final inspection, the chief engineers checked that the construction met with the original plans. The Kehlsteinhaus was now completely finished. The massive concrete building has a sun terrace on its west side, which today is used for visitors in addition to the rear sun terrace. The center of the house is octagonal in shape and was built with massive square sandstones. From the large windows, one used to be able to see Hermann Göring's house. The greenhouse used to stand at the bottom of the small round hill. Bormann's house was also visible. From a relatively simple hallway where the lift is situated, one could walk into the dining area. This could seat around 28 people. With beautiful oak paneling, this is by far the most comfortable room in the house. It was only used twice. Immediately next to this is Adolf Hitler's study, which was lavishly decorated. Also just off from the hall, one will find, set lower down, the room which is now referred to as the Eva Braun room. Yet again expensively decorated, it is covered with a wood that can only be found in this Bavarian region. The view from this room is a spectacular one over the mountain range. In both summer and winter, there were permanent guards posted on the Kehlstein. No easy task considering the area they had to cover, to ensure that sabotage remained an impossibility. A fence surrounded the Kehlstein area, again closely guarded by SS soldiers. On September the 16th, 6 months before the official presentation from Bormann on behalf of the Nazi Party, Hitler made his first visit to the Kehlsteinhaus. Occupying the sofa on the right is Hitler and Eva Braun. Dr. Fritz Todt was also a guest and received personal congratulations from Hitler. Hitler was extremely impressed with the workmanship but had problems with the altitude. Hence the fact he only made 13 official visits to the Kehlstein. How often he was there unofficially is still not known, even today. Most believe that he used the drive up to help impress his diplomatic guests. Here, for example, with the French ambassador André-François Poncet. The Reichsaußenminister Joachim von Ribbentrop was also a frequent guest. The manager of the German work front, Dr. Robert Ley, on the left of this picture, is seen here with his wife on the terrace of the house. On the right of this picture is Julia Schaub, Hitler's personal adjutant. Martin Bormann can be seen by the corner of the house. Hitler's longtime friend Eva Braun used the house quite often, bringing also her sister Gretel and other friends, spending time together in her private room and also on the sun terrace. On June the 3rd, 1944, the Kehlstein was used on Bormann's suggestion to host a wedding party, that of Gretel, Eva's sister, with SS General Hermann Fegelein. Hitler did not attend the reception due to the war, and also sees no reason for celebrations. He remained at his private house, the Berghof. Although the guests were first greeted by Hitler at his house, they then formed a convoy for the drive up to the Kehlstein. The air raids in 1943 were getting worse, with the Allies growing in strength and gaining ground. Due to this, an anti-aircraft gun was installed at the Kehlstein. In the assumption that Hitler's War Command Center was inside the mountain, the Kehlstein, along with the Berghof, were declared the main and most important targets. Berchtesgaden and the Obersalzberg surrendered quietly to the 101st Airborne Division of the U.S. Army on May the 5th, 1945. The original orders were to take the Obersalzberg and arrest any prominent Nazis. Making their way up the steep mountain road, they had no idea as to what lay in wait for them once they reached the top. After taking the Obersalzberg, they continued by forming a convoy of cars that proceeded to take them to the Kehlstein. This original film clip was taken by an American soldier and documents the occupation of the Alpine fortress. Meanwhile, the soldiers realized that they could not meet with any further resistance, since the Kehlsteinhaus had also been deserted. The very first visitor to the Kehlstein was General Maxwell Taylor, who commanded the 101st Airborne Division. The delegation met in the Grand Hall. With appreciation and not meeting any resistance during the occupation of the Eagle's Nest, they can be observed here relaxing.
Due to its impregnable location, the house up until now had not been looted. However, things were soon to change. The entire contents of the building were taken by the American soldiers. The Kehlstein, renamed Eagle's Nest by the Americans, was now a popular attraction for generals and political leaders of the Allies. 50 years after the occupation, the Americans long gone from Kehlstein, the fascination goes on, not only for the historical building but also for the breathtaking views it offers to the millions who have already shared the experience of it. Through all this time, the house has survived the extremities of the weather conditions. With German forethought in using massive granite blocks to build with, it would endure for 1,000 years, maybe more. The edifice, along with the internal technology that still supplies the house today, remains in the original condition. In 1952, the Kehlstein was handed back to the Bavarian government, who then rented the house to the Alpine Association. It was then opened to the public. In 1960, after a few successful years as a tourist attraction, the German government founded the Berchtesgaden County Federation, a committee who allocates the profits from the Kehlstein. From here, the Kehlstein looks small and insignificant, yet so many of the important decisions that would affect world history were made here. Decisions that also are affecting the fate of the world today. Hopefully, through education, the history of this period can prevent reoccurrences and the world will live in peace.